Back in 1990, there was a thrash metal album that got a lot of hate upon release due to some production issues. It wasn't as fast as aggressive as most of the thrash albums at the time, but what if I told you that was the whole point? They may have slowed it down, got experimental, and even tacked on the obligatory power ballad, but I think it deserves another listen.
We're not worthy!
And by the end of the video, you might agree with me. I'm talking about When the Storm Comes Down by Flotsam and Jetsam, an album that might be one of thrash metal's most misunderstood albums. Stick around because I'll be revealing which track I believe holds up the best in 2025. First, let me give you some history. The band formed in Phoenix, Arizona in 1981. They had a few different names at first, such as Paradox, Dreadlocks, Dogs with a Z, then finally Flotsam and Jetsam. The band is most known for having Jason Newsted as a member in the early days.
I decided to do it with music, and that's what I have to fill my time with.
But the rest of the lineup included vocalist Eric A.K. Knudsen, guitarist Ed Carlson, and later Michael Gilbert, and drummer Kelly David Smith. They released their debut album Doomsday for the Deceiver on July 4th, 1986. Here's some trivia you might not have known. This was the first album to ever receive a 6K rating in Kerrang! Magazine. Before I continue, let me know in the comments if you bought Doomsday for the Receivers back in the day, because I discovered them after this, which I will get to in a minute. This was also the only album with Jason Newsted. Shortly after the release of this album, the metal world received the bad news of the death of Cliff Burton. Therefore, Jason Newsted left the band and joined Metallica. Flotsam and Jetsam was now looking for a replacement, and they found Michael Spencer. A year later, Flotsam and Jetsam signed with Elektra Records.
Can't rain all the time.
They toured with other big names in the thrash metal scene, which were Megadeth, Slayer, and Testament.
Totally lied to by our album covers, man.
They released No Place for Disgrace in 1988. This one had a cover of Elton John's Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. This was the first song I had ever heard from the band when I watched the music video on Headbangers Ball.
My mates must tell me when the boys get here. It's 7 o'clock and
I'll be talking more about the Headbangers Ball later on, so stick around. Then in 1989, the band signed with MCA Records and began to work on their third album. This brings us to the album in question, When the Storm Comes Down. It's time to talk about the album, which has 11 tracks. It's 49 minutes long. The album opens with The Master Sleeps with a thick distorted bass guitar and traditional thrash metal galloping. Seamlessly changes from tempo to slow to fast. Keep this tempo change in mind, it will be coming up later. It continues with Burn Device with some acoustic guitars and clean singing.
deep black hole of my heart.
This one caught me off guard.
The Matrix is everywhere.
The song continued with heavy galloping and thrash metal guitar riffs, including some interesting lead guitar effects, followed by a catchy chorus, moving into double time, letting you know they can still go hard. Deviation has some fast and powerful drum beats with lots of old school thrash metal guitar riffs and some groovy bass guitar, before increasing its speed again. October Thorns begins with some cool palm muted guitar riffs, a slower pace with some neoclassical elements. Shout out to the bass player on this one. October Thorns also features vocals that soar like an eagle and a very melodic guitar solo, which later takes a listener on this trippy psychedelic journey before coming back and knocking you over with more of that thrash and some creepy spoken word lyrics. But just when you least expect it, they throw you a curveball. No More Fun has some funky bass guitar in the style of either Death Angel or Infectious Grooves. Continuing with thrashy riffs and vocals that sound like an angry gorilla. I give them props for getting experimental. Suffer the Masters brings back those adolescent memories of watching Headbangers Ball on Saturday nights.
Let's get out of here.
This one features sound bites from news clips, slower rhythms, and a cleaner guitar tones. Pretty cool music video. "666," which I have written the way it's on the text on the screen. Straightforward, in-your-face thrasher with some powerful drumming and vocals that roar like a banshee. They like to keep the listener on their toes, and this song includes an acoustic interlude accompanied with melodic leads that come from out of nowhere. Greed has some galloping riffs and powerful drumming, followed by some big Anthrax-style gang vocals in the chorus. EMTEK has more of that thick bass guitar sound, the slower pace, heavier riffs, followed by some neoclassical clean guitars. In other words, it's a power ballad with that tried and true formula of the light verse, heavy chorus.
For the benefit of all mankind.
I don't know what the acronym of the song means. I looked it up, but I couldn't find anything. All I know is the song's about government experiments, people using human guinea pigs in experiments and coercing them with a little bit of money. Stick around, this ties directly into why this album deserves a second listen. Scars is a thrasher with lots of speed and some killer old school riffs. The album ends with a 30-second long song called KAB. It's kind of like a comedy bit in the form of a very fast hardcore punk song with silly lyrics. Now in part 3, I want to give you a few reasons why this album deserves a second chance. First reason is that this album shows that the band was evolving. By the late 80s, a lot of thrash bands were starting to sound the same, but Flotsam and Jetsam started to experiment more. They pushed the envelope. It wasn't just the same old aggressive thrash metal. There were elements of power metal, some brighter melodies. It was a start of making thrash more accessible to reach a wider audience without selling out. In other words, they tweaked their sound so slightly in a way so they could stand out in the crowd. The second reason was their ability to experiment with different styles. I just mentioned how they were making the music more accessible. They also took a few risks that paid off. For example, some songs had more groove, some had slower tempos. It was different than their previous work. There were tracks like the EMTEK that had acoustic elements and more of a power ballad format. Granted, they're not the first band to have done this as a thrash band, because we know Testament and Death Angel had already done ballads, but Flotsam and Jetsam were able to put their unique spin on it. The third reason is that the album still holds up very well despite the production issues. Back when this album was released, many thrash fans criticized the production, especially the weird snare drum sound, but over time people overlooked it and saw that the album still worked despite these minor flaws. Not only that, but the production style will later be recognized in shaping the evolution of thrash metal. The fourth reason is the use of the bass guitar. We all know sometimes in metal, especially thrash metal, the bass guitar gets buried.
The numbers all go to 11. Look.
Or it's difficult to hear. Many songs are written so the bass guitar plays the same notes as the rhythm guitarist. Therefore, sometimes you don't notice it or it just disappears completely, like the famous And Justice for All controversy. But bass player Troy Gregory's performance was more prominent and defined on this album compared to other releases. He even gets a little funky on the track No More Fun. The fifth reason is that many songs still get played live or have become fan favorites. One example of this is the track Suffer the Masses. This is one of the songs that still appears on Spotify playlists as well as the live shows. Pretty impressive for an album that received mixed reviews upon release. In other words, this is the song that holds up best in 2025, as I alluded to earlier in this video. So here's the question for you. Which track do you think aged the best? Drop it in the comments. I read and respond to every one. Finally, the real reason why this album is a hidden gem is because of its resilience. It signifies a turning point in their career. It was bold and experimental. It was complex, yet still melodic. The lyrics were well written. They addressed a wide variety of issues that were relevant back in the day. They pushed boundaries. Not only that, but it stood the test of time despite initial criticism. Check out my review of the most recent album, I Am the Weapon, from 2024. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. I will see you in the next one.